Welcome to the Roundtable for the movie The Heart of Man, Chapter 3, The Cliff.
So just in terms of the cliff and the face of God as we are talking about that, I think sometimes we forget that there's a reason why we're jumping. And I think a lot of our stories, we do these destructive things or we make poor choices because there are things that have happened early on in our story. And we see that throughout the movie in terms of the stories that were shared, is that there's trauma and pain introduced early on. We live in a fallen world, right? So there's this brokenness, not necessarily even by our own choice. We're victimized, we experiencing something painful, maybe our parents go through a divorce, or something that is like a bomb is dropped off in our souls.
Wow.
And so the sense of when we do make the choice later on to do destructive things or things that don't make sense or things that where we run from God, all of it's, God looks at that and he goes, he knows why. He knows the story.
Wow.
Yeah. And so there isn't a sense of, and when I'm working with people, I always try to think about not what they're doing right now, but thinking about how we got here. And it's so easy for me to sit in judgment in that moment with somebody if I'm looking at what is going on right now.
Wow.
Versus if I look at the sense of like, oh my gosh, there's a bomb that went off when they were 8 years old.
Wow.
And they're still living with that trauma and the pain and the confusion. And so compassion, and I think whether that's compassion, the compassion of God, compassion towards ourselves when we do make poor choices, we have to understand that there are reasons and beliefs and things that have got planted in our personal theology about who we are that lead us to do things that are contrary to really the freedom that God wants.
It's amazing.
You take that thought and move it from the individual to the systemic, right? Which is something that you said a mouthful, right? My buddy Sho Baraka says that we as being image bearers have become like creators and cultivators, right? So you have flawed people making flawed systems, right? And set them up, right? Which almost sets a conveyor belt that we all just run off the cliff with because the system is flawed, right? Because flawed people made a flawed system, right? And like you said, nobody just wakes up in the morning and says, I'm gonna do self-destructive behavior. There's a context, right? So if you take what you're saying, that there's a history that's blown off. So like that history might be the Three-Fifths Compromise. That history might be the Indian Removal Act. That history might be redlining, might be Jim Crow. It might be, you know what I'm saying? It might be, there's a million things that creates structures, right, that cities and people groups sit in, right, that would cause them to say, this is the best choice, right, to somehow secure my survival, my resources, and my happiness. Because, but it's so if you can, like you said, understand people's decisions in context rather than sitting at home watching the news and being like, look, they're rioting, they're destroying their own neighborhood. Why would they even do that? If you just comply, then everything will be like, okay. There's an history here that you're not acknowledging. And knowing, like you said, that sitting at the end of that is saying God understands the context. So yes, the cultural memory, the collective identity, the collective suffering, the collective trauma that comes with flawed people setting up flawed systems. Right? That ultimately are, like he's doing, looking at another island and saying, there's something there for me, right? And I not only want it for myself, I want it for my posterity. I want it for everybody. So you're setting up a system, right? And then we just sit in that, and the conveyor belt takes us off a cliff.
Wow. That is amazing. And I think, going with that whole, whether it's a conveyor belt and it's a cultural broken system, or whether it's ourself, the reality is that we're going off the cliff.
Yes.
And I want to go there for a moment because I do think that was such a powerful moment of the film. Is that we've all been there at the table where it's Temptation's arrived. We know the Father's still watching. And he's even behind us going, no, don't do it. And yet still blatant. Can't shake this. Made up my mind. James talks about it in the Bible where it's desire, but now it's conceived. It's given birth to something. I'm going to willfully, knowing what I'm doing, I'm going to walk off this cliff. I don't know all the consequences to this, but I'm willing to venture here. And that's a long fall. By the way, I don't know if we used a stunt in that scene, because that's
That dude's a stud.
Yeah, he's a
Total
stud.
stud.
He held himself pretty good there, But I was like, whoa, Michael Phelps. But I got her on that one. But I thought this is an accurate picture here.
Yeah.
This happens to us.
Yeah.
It was one of the times in the films. There's a few I'm sure that all of us can relate with, but I'm going like, I know that feeling. I've been there. I know it. Why is that what do I look that foolish?
Yeah.
Do I look that dumb? Is the fall that big?
Wow.
I think it's little, but this is showing me a visual of how big my sin is. I want to ask this question. What are some of the lies that shame has created? And what is the lie that we've believed about the Father? Because now you're falling, you hit water, you're coming up, and you're going like, I just did that. What is the lie that shame tells us?
Yeah, we relate. I think all of us relate to that jump.
Yeah.
But the issue for me is that I haven't just made that jump once.
Wow.
I've made it time and again. I think shame does for us what multiple consequences will do, and it causes a hopelessness. I might as well jump anyway, because this thing is hopeless.
Right.
I'm addicted to
Right.
whatever this is. And so I jump again. Shame says, different than guilt. Guilt says, I did something wrong. Shame says, I am wrong.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm broken.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this will never get better.
Yeah.
And that's the lie
Wow.
that causes me to keep jumping.
Yeah. Yeah. It says that cliff is unclimbable. Like you're at the bottom, you're like,
Right.
well, getting down was easy.
Yeah.
Getting back up.
Right.
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 So to me, it's that. It's like that was so dumb.
Right.
There's no way. Like, you can't climb it. There's no.
Yeah.
Can't climb it.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do? There's a scene later. I'm not sure if we're gonna get to it when he's like running to the shore and he's trying to like row his way back, and it's like, we're Californians, you dummy.
Yeah.
You're
What is
gonna
this,
like
Castaway?
you really think you could you see them waves? You really think you could do this?
Right.
So that to me, it's that. It's just like, and what am I gonna say even let's just say some miracle I get to the top. What am I gonna say then?
Yeah.
Like-
Right.
What am I gonna say? You just watched me walk off this.
Wow. Right.
What am I gonna say to you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So good.
And I think shame, like you were saying, we think we can never get out of this. It's like it becomes a label. It becomes who we are. And I love this quote. Charles Spurgeon, I think, is one says, "Don't rely too much on labels, because far too often they're fables." And I think that we've let shame label us. I mean, any of us who've preached ever and given an altar call, if your church tradition does that, give one for shame, and you'll feel really good as a
man,
preacher,
yeah.
because half the congregation respond to it, because we do. It's something that we've all bought into, and we do it. We think it's this pattern we can't get out of, because we've allowed it to be a label. We've let it label us. It's like, this is who you are. You're never going to get out of this. It's the lies. It's the enemy trying to say that. But I love that. It's like, stop listening and relying on this label.
Right.
It's not true. It's not true of who you are.
Right.
But you have to get yourself out of that pattern, and that destroys us. It's like a disease.
Yeah. It stays with you.
Yeah.
Shame is one of those things that if you don't deal with it correctly, and again, it goes back to the picture of the Father. If you don't deal with it correctly, shame can walk with you for a long time. It's not this guy that shows up, once a year. Shame's just it becomes almost an innate part of who you are.
Right.
And that's why, going back to the picture of the Father being so powerful, is because what releases us, what appeases shame? It's not our behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not our do-goodisms.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to your point, all the studies, all the research says the only thing that can release shame in our life is radical acceptance. It's not self-help. It's not hyping ourselves up, telling ourselves we're good enough, we're smart enough, doggone it, people like us. It's really what breaks. Thank you. What breaks the power of shame is bumping up into God's radical acceptance of us, just as we are. And that's powerful because shame says that we are not enough, that we're not good enough, that we are somehow forever flawed. And God says, no. Again, you're my son, you're my daughter, I want you. And so that begins to break down the systems. And I think sometimes we really get lost in terms of, how do I deal with my shame? How do I deal with it? Because what you were saying is it just discolors everything in our life. It's like we're swimming in it. We become, it just becomes who we are. It gets in, like this virus embedded into our identity that we carry with us. And it's how we see God, it's how we see ourselves, it's how we see each other. And so that's the power. And whenever I'm working with people in their pain, trauma, counseling, it is going back to reminding them that they are loved.
Wow.
Not only by God, but by me too. The physical human expression of radical acceptance is a very powerful thing to break shame too, as God's acceptance of us. The other thing I was just going to say in terms of the lie that shame tells us, it's simply this, that I am the only one.
Wow.
And so, as we didn't see anybody else jumping off the cliff. We saw one person, and so everyone else is probably making all the right decisions, but me. I am in that isolation, which leads to the hopelessness and the despair and the sense of why bother. I think there's a concept called learned helplessness, and it's this idea of I try, I fail, I try again, I fail, and then I stop trying. And I think the enemy of our freedom, the enemy of our lives says like, see, you tried and you failed, you jumped off the cliff way too many times and now it's hopeless for you.
Yeah. And you are uniquely failed.
You are uniquely failed.
It's just
You're
so powerful.
And so those are the ideas, concepts I really believe the film is tackling in such a profound way, is saying, like, let's challenge that thinking. Let's put it on the table, talk about the shame, and talk about what is really happening there, and then how do we solve that? Again, it's going back to God's love. You are loved and accepted. You belong.
And don't you think in order to deal with shame, you have to deal with the pain. And I think I think shame is it's, for lack of a better, it's the manifestation of the pain in a lot of ways, right? And we're trying to deal with the shame. Like, let's just deal with the shame. But we really got to deal with the pain. And I felt that from the film, and I feel that in my own life. Like, all these people had a critical moment when they dealt with the pain that was causing all this. And it makes me think of this amazing picture of Jesus. Like, how great is Jesus? Like, the best example ever. But in John 11, remember Lazarus dies, his good friend. He doesn't come for 2 days. I still don't understand that. That's why I love him. He's like, I'm going to raise him from the dead.
We're good.
Yeah, we're good. And I don't remember if it was Mary or Martha who was is weeping. Jesus weeps with her. And he's like, well, where is he? And she says, come and see. And leads Jesus to the death, leads Jesus to the place of pain, leads Jesus to the place that needed to be healed and resurrected.
Wow.
And that speaks to me like, okay, Jesus, come and see. We're ashamed to show Jesus our pain. We're ashamed to talk about it. We're ashamed to like go to that dark, hurtful, critical moment that probably has produced the shame and many other things that have gone on in our life. But it's like, I love that picture of Jesus. Come and see. Lead him to your place of pain. Lead him to the cultural memory pain. Lead him to, that moment in time in your history. Lead Jesus there and let him heal you there.
Wow, that's so good.
And then it's amazing what can be eliminated from your heart and your mind and your memory and the shame. I think you can begin to process and deal with.
There's so much truth in the idea of like what you said about that I'm the only one, right? And then the truth of the pain, right? And the pain, when I think about it, even in my own life, the pain is the truth, and the truth is this was my fault. You know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, I'm trying to avoid that. I'm trying to avoid that's just the fact.
Sure.
I did this to me.
Sure.
You know, and it can become, which is like, I think a couple people in the film talked about, like when Jackie was talking about just masturbation and just different things, how they become, the shame becomes a blanket. Like it's secure now. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
This is just who I am. So
Yeah.
like, and now it's a drug. So I'm just going. I might as well just keep like smashing girls, because like, I mean, this.
Yeah.
It's for at least for this 5 minutes. It's like, for that 5 minutes, this choice seemed like it was worth it, right? Just for that, and but then the shame comes back, and you're like, but okay, let me just give me a break from it. You know what I'm saying? Because it's still just avoiding the fact that you did this, you did this, you were given a choice, and you did this,
Right.
You know, and rather than like running to the scream and being like I said, I have to get through this. It's gonna suck, but I have to get through this. But it's not. But where I'm at is far worse, you know. But just that this becomes just this security blanket, like, and I'm gonna wear this shame as like a badge. You know what I mean? Like, no, man, nobody look for me, feel bad for me. And it's like, and now it's like, you know, attention-seeking behavior. Is that what it's called? Like in psychology, now it's just now it's that. So like everybody feel bad for me.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
No, don't nobody look. I'm so ugly. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we just do this to ourselves because it's like. It's still just avoiding,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? What you
Right.
really gotta face is like, nah, dude, sit in it. Like, you made a bad choice, homie. Like, okay, so now that we're here,
Wow.
okay, good. Okay, now let's, you know what I'm saying? But like, but it's getting to that is like, I'd rather hold on to this limbo, this shame.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because admitting the truth that I did this
Yeah.
is painful.
Yes.
So I stay away from that.
Yeah.
Keep with a blanket.
Yeah.
And then I can blame somebody else.
Yeah.
That I did this.
Yeah.
I think shame also says, okay, I did it. I jumped. I landed in the water. I put myself in the situation. And shame wants to convince me that the Father was up there, but went back to the table, and He's left me here.
Yeah.
Sort it yourself.
Yeah.
Shame wants to create a disconnect now. Shame wants to tell me that in order for me to get back right with God, I've got to climb my way back up and beg Him for some attention. But the reality is that if that's how we see, if we allow shame to write that on us, we will stay stuck. We won't climb back up.
Right.
And I love that the film continues to tell a narrative that that's not who the Father is. But I want to ask the second part of the question for this section. It's not only what is the lie about shame, what does shame tell us as a lie, but what does shame tell us about the lie of the Father?
You make me think about two fathers. As Jesus says, there's another father, the father of lies. And God's the father of truth. And so shame wants to trigger me over here to the father of lies.
Right.
And then for me to feed off of that and make my own lies and live in that. Shame triggers that lie.
Right.
So which father am I going to trust? Which father am I going to get to
That's
know,
it.
to
That's
be
it.
intimate with?
Wow.
Yeah, somebody told me too, I think it might have been you, Mike. Wow.
Take the credit.
Just own it.
Let's go
right?
with yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Most things in your life, yes.
Yes. That if this love and grace is not like unfathomable, then it's not God, right? It's I may be butchering your quote, but essentially it's that. It's like if you can get your brain around it, it's probably not really what's happening.
right,
You know what I'm saying? So like the idea is that like why I believe a lie about the Father is because I can't get my brain around anyone being okay with this.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right,
Or
right.
being willing to continue with me after this. Or not making me grovel and say and
Right.
make penance and fix my problems. Say, I forgive you, you're good, but you need to do this. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like I can't. Yes. I can't picture that. I cannot get my head around a grace that says you belong.
Wow. That's powerful.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if it's that, then that's the truth of God. The one you can't imagine, you know,
That's
is
powerful.
Him. Yeah.
Right. Any other good quotes you got up your sleeve?
No, but it's interesting. This topic is so stinking important. And it's something that often we never talk about. It's one of the reasons why I love the film so much. Is like, oh my gosh, we're actually using the language. Now, interesting enough, most of us never sort of use the word shame in our daily conversations, right?
Yeah.
There's sort of this, and all you need for shame to thrive in your heart and in your life is darkness, quietness,
Yeah.
holding on to it, and it will continue to fester and grow.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I think so key is breaking shame is for us to be able to talk about it and know some of the symptoms of it, like the expression of shame. So you're like, okay, I don't like guys will say, I don't struggle with shame. Okay, but are you struggling with anger or rage?
Right.
Again, that
Yeah.
shame is just the engine
Yeah.
to your rage.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you struggle with perfectionism or performance? Again, all of that is just coming from the engine of shame.
So powerful.
And so we got to start putting these things on the table, using good language.
Right.
Because you could talk about shame, and I do talk about shame, and it's so often people go, oh, that's not me. I don't struggle with that. Sure, I got my anger issues, I got my perfectionism issues, I got my performance issues, but it's like the church, Jesus came to address, needs to address this in such a powerful way. And again, has the cure and the solution for it. The love of God, the acceptance of God, the sense of you are forgiven, I smile every time I think about you, right? Like that's, and then you're like, me? Because I feel unworthy.
Right.
I feel unbroken.
Right.
I did all the wrong things. Like, yeah, whatever. Come. It's like,
Yeah. Wow.
and so this topic's so key. And for us, in order for us to actually experience freedom in our lives, we have to tackle this.
Yes.
And we have to know who planted the seed.
Wow.
The shame seed. Like
Wow.
it has been growing in our lives.
Yes.
And again, usually it's from trauma or pain early on in our lives that got put there. We've never dealt with it, and we've seen all the dysfunction from it.
Absolutely.
We've seen all the pain painful choices that we've made from it, but we've never really addressed the core issue.
Yeah.
And when we address the core issue, that's when freedom starts to happen in our lives.
Absolutely. And most of us are afraid, I think, to get exposed in this area, and so we rationalize it by saying, I don't have a shame problem, but I do have all these other problems, because I believe most people are not afraid of failure, they're afraid of the identity attached to failure.
Yes.
And so to admit these things means I am a failure, and I'm more petrified not of my failure, but the identity associated with it. So some of the examples in the film of the guy that got caught, cheating on his wife, how many times that shame to get exposed, because shame wants to convince you that some people know about your secret sins, but hasn't all the way let it out yet. And I think that's really what shame does to us. Shame says you are a failure, and if I go expose you, everyone will now, they'll know.
Yeah.
And they'll know what you know. They'll know what you and I know. They'll know that you have so royally messed up. And that's our fear. Our fear is to cope with it, going like, I don't have an anger problem. I'm good. But deep down, shame's like, you're not good.